Every night, the world almost ended, and almost nobody remembers the god who stopped it. Far beneath the earth, in the black water where the sun goes to die each evening, something waited for it. Not a snake, a serpent the length of the whole horizon, old as the darkness itself, with one single hunger driving all of it, to swallow the sun. To catch that boat of light as it drifted down into the deep, wrap around it, and hold it under until the world above went cold and dark forever. The Egyptians called this thing Apophis, and it was not a story they told for fun. They believed with their whole hearts that every single night the sun had to fight its way through the dark, and that one night it might lose. Only one god stood between Apophis and the end of everything. He took his place at the very front of the sun god's boat, alone, out where the danger was worst, a spear in his hand. And when the serpent came surging up out of the black water, jaws open wide enough to take the sun whole, that god drove the spear down into it, again and again, and held the line until dawn. He did it every night. He never lost. Because of him, the sun climbed back into the sky each morning, and you woke up and you got to live another day. You would think Egypt worshipped that god above all others, the one who saved the entire world every single night on the front line where no one else would stand. Instead, they turned him into the closest thing their religion ever had to the devil. His name was Set. And this is the real story of how the god who guarded the sun became the villain of his own mythology. Stay with me, because the Egyptians understood something about him that we have completely forgotten, and it changes how you see the whole idea of a god of evil. Start with what Set actually was, before anyone called him evil. He was the god of the desert, not the gentle Egypt of the green Nile banks, but the other Egypt, the Red Land, the vast, blistering, killing sand that surrounded every town and swallowed anyone foolish enough to walk into it unprepared. He was the god of the storm, the sudden violence of thunder and the sandstorm that could scour a caravan off the face of the earth. He was strength and disorder and everything wild that would not be tamed. And here is the part that surprises people. For most of Egyptian history, that was not a bad thing to be. The Egyptians were not naive about the world. They knew life was not all calm rivers and golden harvests. There was chaos out there, real and constant. And they wanted a god who embodied it, because a force that dangerous was exactly the force you wanted on your side. Set was raw power. Pharaohs took his name as their own. One of the greatest warrior kings of Egypt called himself Seti, which means, quite literally, man of Set. His armies marched under Set's banner into war. When you needed something destroyed, when you needed a wall of strength between you and your enemies, Set was the god you prayed to. He was terrifying. That was the point. So how does a god like that, a god kings named themselves after, end up as the monster of the story? Before I tell you, if you like the real versions of these myths instead of the cartoon ones, subscribe and stick around. There's a new one every week, and this channel only grows if these reach people who don't know them yet. Alright, it starts, as these things so often do, with a murder. Set had a brother, Osiris, and Osiris had everything. Osiris was the beautiful one, the beloved king who ruled Egypt in a golden age, the god of life and green growing things, married to the radiant goddess Isis. Everyone loved Osiris, and Set, the god of the barren red sand, watched his brother sit on the throne with the perfect wife and the adoring kingdom, and something in him curdled. I am not going to soften this part because the myth doesn't. Set built a beautiful chest, a coffin really, made exactly to his brother's measurements. He threw a great feast, and as a game, he offered the chest to whoever it fit. One by one, the guests climbed in, and it fit none of them, because it was never meant for them. Then Osiris lay down inside, and Set slammed the lid, sealed it shut, and threw his own brother into the Nile to drown in the dark. When Isis found the body and hid it, Set found it too, and this time he tore Osiris into 14 pieces and scattered them across all of Egypt, so his brother could never be whole again. That is the act that defines Set in the popular imagination, the jealous brother, the first murderer, the betrayer. And it is real. That is genuinely in the myth, and it is monstrous. And I'm not here to tell you it wasn't. But if you stop there, you have understood almost nothing about Set. Because the same myth that makes him a murderer also makes him the only reason you are alive to hear about it. Come back to that boat in the dark. Every night the sun god Ra sailed his boat down through the underworld, and every night Apophis was waiting. And of all the gods in all of Egypt, do you know who Ra chose to stand at the prow, at the most dangerous point, to meet the serpent head-on? Set, the murderer, the god of chaos. Because it turned out that the only thing strong enough to beat back absolute chaos was a controlled piece of it. Apophis was the chaos that destroys. Set was the chaos that protects. The Egyptians looked at that serpent, that pure devouring nothingness, and they understood that no gentle god of grain and sunlight was going to win that fight. You needed something as violent as the thing you were fighting. You needed Set. Picture it the way they did. The boat slides into the deepest hour of the night. The water goes still and wrong. And then the coils rise, mountains of them, blotting out what little light there is. The other gods on the boat shrink back. Set does not. He plants his feet at the prow, that strange forked head lowered, and when the serpent lunges, he meets it, driving his spear down through the dark, pinning the thing that wants to unmake the world. He cuts it, he burns it, he holds it under until the horizon finally goes pale, and night after night he delivers. He hands the world back its morning, every time, and asks for nothing. A quick like genuinely helps this reach the next person, if you've got a second. Now here's the question that should be bothering you. If Set saved the entire world every single night, standing at the front of the boat where no other god would go, why do we remember only the murder? The answer is one of the most fascinating things in all of mythology, and it is very human. Egypt changed. The worship of Osiris and his son Horus grew into the beating heart of Egyptian religion. And in that story, Set is the enemy. The god you love needs a villain, and Set was right there. Then history did the rest. Foreign invaders swept into Egypt, rulers the Egyptians hated, and those foreigners happened to favor Set as their own god. So Set became the god of the outsider, the god of the enemy. Everything the Egyptians feared and despised got poured into him. Over centuries, the desert god of necessary strength was slowly rewritten into a symbol of pure evil. In the temples of the late period, priests took chisels to the walls and scratched his name and his image out of the carvings, trying to erase him from history stone by stone. His red-haired animals were driven out or sacrificed. The god who once stood at the prow of the sunboat was recast as a creature of pure darkness. And in the very latest tellings, he gets blurred together with Apophis himself, the exact serpent he used to kill. Sit with how strange that is. They took the one who guarded the gate and slowly turned him into the monster on the other side of it. The protector became the thing he had been protecting you from. That is not a myth that happened all at once. That is a smear campaign that took 1,000 years. So here is what the Egyptians understood that we lost. They did not believe the world was a simple fight between good and evil. They believed the world ran on a balance between order and chaos, and that both were necessary. Order without any chaos is stagnant, dead, a field that never changes. But chaos without any order is Apophis, the serpent that eats the sun. Set was chaos in its necessary form, the storm that clears the air, the strength that guards the gate, the wild, dangerous energy that a living world actually needs to keep moving. He was not good. Let me be clear, he murdered his brother, and the myth never lets him off the hook for it. But he was not simply evil either, and the Egyptians were wise enough to hold both of those truths at the same time, in a single god, for 3,000 years. It took later ages to flatten him into a cartoon villain, because a cartoon villain is easier to understand than the truth. The truth is that the thing standing between you and the end of the world is not always gentle. Sometimes it is the most dangerous force in the room, pointed for once in the right direction. So let me ask you, and I actually want to know, is Set a villain or the most misunderstood god in Egypt? Tell me down in the comments because I read them, and this one is worth arguing about. If you want the other half of this story, the brother Set murdered and what happened when Osiris came back, that video is waiting for you next, and it is one of the strangest resurrections ever told. Subscribe so you do not miss where this is going, and I will see you there.